Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Tiara, aka Bookworm Babe, and today I'm going to be doing my June wrap-up. So, full disclosure from the start, June was such a slow month for me in terms of reading. I really meant to read way more than I actually ended up doing, but like the last book that I read for the month was it was so boring. I'm so sad to say it, but it was so boring. But I always, even if I don't like a book, I will force myself to get through the book because I don't know, I just feel like I need to finish it even if I don't like it, but I feel like I have to like power through it. And it basically took me the better part of like 2.5 weeks to finish. So it was that like second half of the month that just kind of went out the window for me because I was just like so completely taken up with trying to finish this one book, but at the same time like so bored by it. But yeah, long story short, I finished it, but I just didn't end up reading very much for the month, so it's not going to be a particularly long video. But the first 2 books that I did read for June were really good, so I'm definitely excited to share those ones, and then I will tell you guys about the last one at the end and basically like what happened there. So the first book that I read in June was called The Swinging Bridge. So this is the book and it is by Ramabai Espinet, and I really did enjoy this one a lot. It had a bit of a slow start, but we are introduced to our main protagonist, whose name is Mona, and we're given a lot of background on just like where her life is at and what's going on. Mona is in her 40s. She lives in Montreal. If you don't know where that is, it is in Canada. Montreal is a city in Quebec, which is in Canada, and she is a film researcher, and she's working on a project with a really good friend of hers. And then we also get a bit of an intro to a relationship that she has going on as well, but she's not fully able to commit herself to this relationship despite the fact that the partner that she's seeing wants to move in and start a life, and she's just very hesitant and kind of reluctant to give up her freedom of sort of still having her own place but being able to come and be cozy when she feels like it, essentially. So once we get past that, we're taken right into the story, and what happens is Mona gets a call from her sister that basically her older brother Kalo is dying. So she hops on a flight to Toronto, and when she arrives, she basically finds out the depths of what's going on. So they find out for the first time that Kalo is actually bisexual, and he has AIDS and has had AIDS for quite a while, and of course now it's in the advanced stages, and that's why he is dying. And to avoid scandal and just, you know, judgment from the family, Mona's sister, after disclosing this information to her, basically says that it is Kalo's wish for them to just keep it between the 3 of them. And of course Kalo has a partner as well who knows what's going on, and they don't want their parents to know that it's AIDS. They think that he is sick from something else instead, because of course, like, you know, there's judgment. This is an Indo-Trinidadian family as well, so you can only imagine like the types of things that might have been said like in the family might be passed on, you know, other family members, just like that whole judgment if people find out, right? Which is always a big thing. Nobody ever wants people to find out, so this is no exception. So as Mona goes and begins to visit her brother, Kalo reveals his dying wish to her. So the family immigrated from Trinidad to Canada when the kids were like teenagers, and Kalo wants Mona to go back to Trinidad and essentially retrieve their grandfather's home and property that their father had sold years before when they moved away. And it's such a special property to them too, and so significant. And their grandfather never wanted the father to sell it or to part with it, but he took that risk and did in order to move his family away. So Mona has to return to Trinidad, which she does, and then with help from one of her cousins, she is able to reclaim the property and go through all of that process. But along the way, she does a lot of reflecting on her life growing up, because it wasn't until she was a teenager, I think like 17 or 18, that she left Trinidad. So she did grow up there. She went to school there, high school and everything, and we get lots of snippets from Mona's life as she is back in Trinidad and starts to reminisce on all of the things in her childhood that happened. And so one of the really significant events that had happened was back in their childhood. I think when Mona was about 7, her brother Kalo was like 9. They had a really big fight with their dad, and her brother basically told him off, said he wasn't doing his job as a father, and of course her father was in a very drunken state at the time and basically like almost killed her brother, and it was just a very family changing event that night in their childhood. So that's just one of the events that Mona is able to look back at, along with moments in her life where just being a female in Trinidad, in Indo-Trinidadian culture, she had a lot of expectations placed on her. There were a lot of rules that she had to follow, and I think it's a very interesting perspective that we get in the book too, because there are moments when her father had gotten very angry at her because the boy she was seeing was black. Another moment in her childhood where her mom had sent her to the market and a man started talking to her and she thought it was one of her mom's friends, and really he was actually just trying to end up hurting her, but luckily didn't. But all these incidents fell on her. Her mother got upset at her for, you know, bringing shame, or if anyone had seen them, it would have been shame on the family. So I like that commentary on the female experience as well, and overall it was a 4.5 star read for me. I really liked the story, and as it went on, it got a lot more interesting too, and there's parts that are basically go back in time, some of the family's ancestors and how they got to Trinidad and everything that basically happened once they got to Trinidad. So it's it gets very like complex and dimensional, and I just really enjoyed that from start to finish. So highly recommend this one. The next book that I read was called Trauma, a collection of short stories, and this is written by Elizabeth Jaikaran. This is what the book looks like. I have so much I can say about this book. I'll tell you guys right off the bat, it was a 5 out of 5 star read. I really loved it. It was absolutely incredible. So this book is a collection of short stories, short narratives that are all taken from real life stories of trauma of women in Guyana. So our author weaves in all these different stories together in a specific order. All the characters, for the most, not characters, but all the women for the most part are connected because they are part of the author's family, except for I think one or two that maybe we're just connected with for the book. But these are all stories of trauma. They're all stories of real trauma that happen. So for sure there's a trigger warning on this. I absolutely want to say that there is rape, gang rape, homophobia, what else? Domestic abuse, just women being left on their own with kids despite men having other families, and they kind of just float in and out and whatnot. So there's a lot of very strong women, but a lot of very hard stories to digest and to read about. And this book left me in such an emotional place, because when I read the end, so the end is like the closing that's written by the author herself, her feelings and her experiences, and basically she gives that reflection of the different trauma that women have faced, being able to digest this and move forward and realize like so many things that we have today are because of the sacrifices and the strength of those who came before us, essentially. So each story was quite short. The book is not very long. I think it's 126 pages? 125. Yeah, it's like 125 pages. Then there's a glossary and a sources list at the back. After each of the shorts, she accompanies with a little pocket of information. So for example, there's information snippets on the suicide rates in Guyana, Indo-Muslim community in Guyana, just little things that accompany the stories. And basically, if you're not familiar with Guyanese culture or just Indo-Guyanese culture, whichever, you can still like totally read this and find understanding. And hence why I really like that like context that she throws in, because even if you're not Guyanese, you can get some of that history and then kind of put it into context with what you just read. And there is a glossary at the back as well, so if you don't understand a term that's being used or one of the words, you can just look it up at the back and see what it means, and it's no problem at all. So I really like that this was able to be like a universal read. Like even if you're not Guyanese, if you are, of course, you may be able to relate to some of this, or just find of course like that cultural connection in it. It was, like I said, it was just so emotional, so raw, and just beautifully written, like literally beautifully written from start to finish. I read this out in a day, like literally a day. I couldn't put it down. I had just, the day I picked it up, I committed the entire day to reading it, and that's just what it was. So 5 out of 5 stars. I would highly recommend picking this up. And so the last book that I read and recently had just finished after like the longest period of time was A Bend in the River by V.S. Naipaul. So I was excited when I first picked this up and excited to read it because it is, I mean, it's a well-known novel, and apparently it was like very well praised, and a lot of people from what I've seen had liked it, but honestly I genuinely didn't like it. So it takes place in Africa. It is about a man named Salim who is offered a business to own a shop out in a very secluded community in Central Africa. Starts up this new life in the village where he comes in contact with all these different people. He has Ferdinand, who is the son of one of the ladies who shops very often at his shop, and her name is Zabeth. Zabeth is from one of the tribes. She comes in like monthly to come and do her shopping, so she has built a relationship with Salim, and eventually she sends her son to school in that town and has Salim watch over him. He has his friends Mahesh, Shoba, who he goes and has lunch with weekly, and then later on there's blasts from his past. He has a friend named Indar who comes and visits. Then he meets some other characters, Raymond and his wife Yvette. Salim ends up having an affair with Yvette. A lot that goes on in this book. You are really taken into the time period. So I think this is around like the 60s or the 70s, and it's a very post-colonial atmosphere in Africa. There's a lot of conflict with the government, with the president. Things are being taken over, being changed constantly. There's a lot of turmoil going on in the country as well throughout the years, and we see that. Towards the end of the book, Salim had gone to visit a friend in London, and when he comes back, everything is completely flipped over. His shop was taken away, he ends up in jail, and then at the very end he gets an opportunity to hop on a steamer and escape, and he's told like, you need to get out of the country, things are changing, it's not changing positively for anybody, so go. And basically that's where the story ends off. He has hopped on this boat and he is on his way out. Sounded interesting at first, and I really had high hopes for this book, but it was so hard for me to get into it. I just genuinely couldn't do it. I found myself so bored and struggling to get through the pages. I think the most exciting parts were literally the affair with Raymond's wife Yvette. Those were probably the most exciting parts of the book for me. But otherwise I didn't really enjoy it very much, and I don't know if anyone else has read this and maybe had a different opinion, because when I first got it and looked through like Goodreads, some people really liked it, some people really like the commentary on everything that was going on, the historical aspects, and I really like historical fiction, so I thought I would really like this book. But yeah, I just didn't. I had such a hard time getting through it. So personally for me, I would give it like a 2-star. It just wasn't very exciting. Salim wasn't a very dimensional character. I felt like he was just very stagnant and kind of like boring himself. And again, that's why I'm like, I think the affair was the most exciting, because it was like, oh, like, yes, you're doing this, okay, you know. But other than that, yeah, it wasn't for me. I don't know, that's just my opinion. Maybe somebody else really liked it, but it was a no for me, guys. it was a no for me. Yeah, those are the 3 books that I read for the month. You know what, this video actually ended up being longer longer than I thought, despite only talking about 3 books, but it's cool. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope that maybe some of these like caught your attention and stuff too. The first 2 like hands down were really good, so I would definitely recommend those. The last one, I don't know, take that at your own like discretion, because if you're into that style, maybe you'll like it. If not, like, I don't know, but again, like I said, that's just me. So I do have a whole bunch of new books that I've gotten as well. So next week I'm going to be doing a haul to show you guys all the different things that I got. So a lot of books by Caribbean authors, a lot of books by Black authors, so lots of diversity, lots of really cool stuff, and I'm excited to show you guys. So that's it for me today. I will talk to you guys next week. Bye!